This is how to become a demon at Curve Billy. Why play Billy when there's better and easier killers out there? I just see him as a chill killer. You can just play for chases and not care about the result of the game at all. The fun of him is learning them, and it's just so rewarding. Honestly, when you hit that first curve, you'll understand the feeling. Sensitivity is crucial as Billy, and surprisingly, controller sensitivity actually affects your ability to curve the keyboard and mouse. So personally, I like to use around 70%, however anything above that works fine. Choosing a style of Billy will be important for your learning process. Here are a few of the add-on combinations you can choose from. For learning curving, one engraven and an overheat aid. Curve Billy, double engravens. Meta Low Pro Billy, Drift Billy, and engraven and boots. Drift King Billy, double boots. Stealth Drift Billy, full Stealth Billy. Charge time and speed are the major differences between normal Billy and Curve Billy. Double engravens quickly negates any extra charge time with its map traversal speed, which easily make them the best add-ons when pressuring the map. Feathering is the act of revving your chainsaw for the majority, then tapping it as close to 100% as possible. Baking this into your muscle memory is crucial for a Billy. This is going to help you with hitting your back rubs, as typically patience in reading the survivor's movements is going to reward you in more consistent downs, as well as mind gaming before your curve attempts. Billy's turn rate is insane. For the first 3/4 of a second at the beginning of a sprint, you have an ultra high sensitivity period, allowing you to do some crazy turns, but after this, his turn rate is reduced by 13 times, making it quite difficult to turn around obstacles. Here lies the strength of both boot add-ons, significantly increasing that turn rate, allowing you to be way more precise as you drift across the map, pinpointing those survivors to get them downs. Yes! Let's fucking go! Now, the most important thing about curving is knowing your angle and positioning. Take this rectangular shaped car. If you start your chainsaw too early, you're either going to not make the angle and go too wide, or you're going to bump into the tile. If you start your curve too late, there's a good chance the survivor might already be around the corner, or you might go too wide. And if you start your chainsaw too far away from the tile, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to make the angle to get the survivor. In terms of positioning, you want to be touch tight to the shortest side of the loop, just a bit around the corner. Finding a comfortable angle to look towards when going for a max turn rate curve is crucial. My angle is about 130 degrees from where I want to land the curve, so once I line that up, immediately flick the chainsaw towards there. Here's a few examples of finding that angle. Knowing where to curve is something you'll understand the more you practice. But as a general rule, you want to curve long-sided tiles such as vehicles, long walls, and certain filler pallets, basically rectangular shapes. And you want to avoid square-shaped tiles, as well as other tiles that have complex collision. The fun of Billy is coming up to each tile, seeing what works, what doesn't, and experimenting. Now you know how and where to curve, it's all about creating those opportunities. Gauging a survivor is the first thing you should do once you start a chase. How are they going to play a tile? Are they going to camp the pallet? Are they going to greet the pallet? Are they not even going to loop the pallet? Once you get a grasp of this, it's all about adapting. Here, Cheryl has greeted the pallet. We do a little mind game to force her on the long side of the tile, and then before she can reach the pallet, we initiate the curve and catch her off guard. In this example, Nia is camping this pallet extremely hard, so we really have to work to create opportunity. Here, this Nia decides to pre-drop the pallet. In this situation, we mind game that we're going to break it, which puts Nia into a very vulnerable position. We go around the side, we get the curve. This tile, Nancy has clear line of sight of me, meaning I have to mind game at one side, and then induce hesitation with spins and double backs to get the curve on the other. Here, Bill's only line of sight of me is through the window. I show him which direction I'm going, then immediately moonwalk facing the other direction, so you can't see my red glow through the window. This gets enough delay out of him so I can get the distance for the curve. This example, I hide my red stain coming through the pallet to get the distance on Steve, making him slightly panic. I wait till he goes around the tree, I lose line of sight, and then quickly reverse in the other direction, narrowly missing him, however the opportunity was there. Overheat is by far one of the most frustrating and unnecessary changes made in Dead by Daylight. And as a Billy player, you just have to learn to live with it. For a beginner, you're probably going to overheat quite a lot, so here's some tips to help that. The overheat limit is 100 charges. Starting your chainsaw adds 5 charges, while revving up adds 8 charges per second. Once you initiate your chainsaw, the sprint will add 2 charges per second. Generally, revving up your chainsaw to max will add about a quarter of the heat limit. So as an absolute maximum, I would suggest to start your chainsaw at this bottom corner of the gauge. This allows you to feather for a few seconds before releasing the chainsaw without overheating. The standard cool rate is 3.5 charges per second, however, once you've overheated it's about 6.6 charges per second. A handy tip if you're close to overheating is forcefully overheating after you down a survivor. This will help you reach 0 way quicker, and once you hook that survivor, you'll be good to go. There's also 2 add-ons revolving around being in overheat, Big House Glove and Big Bottle. They're trash, never use them. However, the Punctured Muffler add-on makes your cooldown 50% quicker, and the Junkyard Air Filter increases your overheat limit to 120 charges. 2 very handy add-ons while you're learning Billy. Once you get better at Billy, you'll soon be facing higher caliber survivors, and some of your old tricks might not work anymore. Here's some things to look out for in those survivors. Simply if a survivor has enough time to react to your chainsaw, they can dodge you. You might have to read if they're likely to go wide and anticipate it. Some of these survivors may preemptively go wide on a tile, trying to read you. This is hard to gauge, and sometimes you might have to just 50-50 it to go wide or tight on the tile. Others may simply just leave the tile while you're trying to set up a curve. Holding W like this can be extremely rough if it goes unpunished. And the forbidden anti-Billy tech, the crouch tech. Because of the nature of the survivor's hitbox and the height of the chainsaw hitbox, there can be moments where you actually slide off crouching survivors, and this is just immensely frustrating. However, it's very satisfying to counter. Don't be afraid to melee or back rub them. Now as for Billy, there's a few advanced things you can do. Knowing which loops have no collision will make for some insanely satisfying moments, allowing you to curve way earlier around a tile. Some of these tiles include the cars on Badham and Autohaven, these tables on Ormond or Haddonfield, or the hay bales on the new map Shattered Square. Why did you dodge into me? Billy being an insta-down killer brings a whole new level of threat to those survivors. Being able to dead zone a player is a huge mechanic of this kit. You can do this by chainsawing ahead of them to cut them off, forcing them in at nothingness by feathering your chainsaw, or breaking a pallet when the survivor's facing outside the map, forcing them into a dead zone. One of my favourite things to do as Billy is 180 or 360 chainsaws. This involves mind gaming the survivor around the short side of the tile and then immediately spinning around and releasing his chainsaw around the other side, completing a full 360 motion down the survivor. This is one of your more advanced tools in your arsenal. It can catch even the best of survivors out. It's extremely difficult to pull off, however I'll slide right into your Taj. Quickly to run through one of Billy's biggest shortcomings, map RNG. In this aspect, Billy really does feel like an age killer where a lot of the more recent maps are just not favourable for him at all. You have to go all the way back to Dead Dogs for a good map. To get an idea of which maps are good or bad for him, I made a quick tier list. Generally, realms such as Autohaven, Macmillan and some of the Cauldron maps are pretty good for him. And other unique maps like Ormond or Dead Dogs are great too. Other maps like Red Forest or Yamaoka are alright for certain aspects such as traversal, but they have a lot of difficult loops, can be quite challenging to play, but this can make it quite satisfying if you do well. Here's where it gets stinky. Larry's really bad map for Billy for its window density, tight spaces, and it's just hard to traverse. Now the game, you'd think was quite good because he can break pallets with his chainsaw, but there's just too many of them, takes too long to get through them, and the loops are really hard to play too. Now, Garden of Joy and Eyrie of Crow, if you see these map offerings, do not hesitate. Alt F4 the game. They're super frustrating for collision and generally just really hard loops to navigate. This map is shit. And RPD, one of my favourite maps, just not as Billy. It's very, very difficult to use your chainsaw to traverse the map. A lot of pallets, a lot of windows, in general just a nightmare for Billy. And finally, to wrap up this guide, a few perk choices that I'd recommend for Billy. Now obviously, any slowdown perk is going to be just as viable on Billy as it is any other killer. However, I prefer not to use them as I play more for fun and not to win. This said though, passive slowdown is probably your best bet going for perks like Deadlock, Pain Res, Deadmans. Allows you to play your game without thinking too much and keeping up that high aggression. No Way Out is a fantastic pick. It rewards you for playing fair, and it allows you to just play more Billy. It's great. Now, the main category of perks you want to look into are Aura and Information. Particularly Barbecue, Lethal, and Floods are 3 incredible perks for Billy to keep up that high aggression and constant chases. With these perks, there's little to no downtime. Nowhere to Hide, Tinker, and Bitter Mum are some other good choices when it comes to finding survivors. A perk like Infectious is basically built for Billy. It's fantastic. It allows for a really high risk-reward playstyle. Getting multiple people slugged at once can be a sure way to win a match quickly. Now for some good chase-orientated perks. For a beginner player, I'd probably recommend looking into using something like Bamboozle, and maybe even in the accompanying perks such as Superior Anatomy and Fire Up. With Windows being Billy's biggest counterplay, shutting these down quickly makes hitting chainsaws way easier as it limits the survivor's options. Another good pick is Brutal Strength and Enduring. Particularly Brutal might seem like a weird option. However, if you get consistently stunned, kicking a pallet is a better option than revving up your chainsaw and breaking it, as you don't want to add your overheat too much. If you're considering a Drift Billy or Stealth Billy approach, perks like Tinkerer, Trails of Torment, Plaything, Retribution are fantastic picks. It's a risky but fun playstyle. And finally, the elephant in the room, Shadowborn. Now this perk, approach at your own risk. You'll become completely addicted if you use it for a few games. It's a total waste of a perk slot. Or is it? Personally, I feel like there's a lot of merit in the use of Shadowborn. Firstly, when you're trying to backdraft survivors, one of the common techniques they'll use is called an FOV tech, where they'll run into you, so you can lose track of them. With Shadowborn, this isn't a problem. And when it comes to curving, when you're mind gaming a survivor on a tile, that little bit extra FOV just allows you to track the survivor better, and also see the edges of the tile, so you don't collide with them. And that concludes my Billy guide. I appreciate any time you took to watch this, and if you have any more questions, feel free to fire them away in the comments. In the meantime, catch me live on Twitch at White Noise Design, where you'll see me hit the most insane chainsaw flicks and then miss the easiest back revs on baby Megs. And remember, enjoy Billy.